He never expected that a small moment on an ordinary evening would change something inside him. It was one of those quiet days when everything felt the same. It's almost too routine, and he walked home without thinking much about anything. The street was calm, and the winter breeze carried a soft chill that made him walk a little faster. As he reached his building, he noticed the elderly neighbor who lived on the ground floor standing near the gate, as looking like he wanted to speak to someone. The neighbor had always been kind, but kept mostly to himself, and most people barely stopped to talk with him. That day, however, he called out gently, asking for a minute. The young man stopped, a bit surprised. The old neighbor smiled, a warm but tired smile, and said he had something he wanted to give away. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. The wood was dark and old, with scratches here and there, but it had a charm that made it look special. The neighbor said it had belonged to him for many years, but he no longer had anyone to pass it to. He wanted it to be with someone who might appreciate it. The young man tried to refuse at first, unsure why he deserved such a gift. But the old man insisted. He accepted the music box with a polite thank you. The neighbor nodded, wished him a peaceful evening, and slowly walked back inside. The young man looked down at the small box in his hands, wondering why it felt heavier than it looked. When he got to his room, he placed his bag on the chair, sat on the edge of his bed, and held the music box carefully. He opened the lid, expecting nothing more than a small melody. Instead, the moment the lid lifted, a tiny metal cylinder inside began to turn, and a soft tune filled the room. The melody was delicate, slow, and comforting. It had a simple beauty that felt almost magical, as if it carried a hidden story. He didn't know much about classical music. He only recognized the names that everyone seemed to know, but he couldn't tell one composer from another. That night, though, as the melody played, something stirred in him. It wasn't dramatic or overwhelming. It was gentle, like a light touch on the shoulder that made him pause and truly listen. The tune seemed familiar in a way he couldn't explain. It made the room feel warmer. It made his thoughts slow down. It even made the long, tiring day fade a little. When the melody stopped, he found himself wishing it had lasted longer. He replayed it again, closing his eyes for a moment. This time, he noticed small details, tiny shifts in the notes, little rises and falls, the soft click of the mechanism. He didn't know why it affected him so deeply, but it did. He sat there for a long time, thinking about how something so simple could change the entire feeling of a room. The music box looked like it had been made many decades ago, and he wondered who had owned it before the neighbor. He imagined someone from a different time opening it, feeling the same calm he felt now. The idea somehow made him feel connected to people he never met. Later that night, after eating a small dinner, he placed the music box on his table, still thinking about it. Curiosity grew inside him. He wanted to know what melody it was and where it came from. He searched online, humming the tune softly, typing out guesses, replaying the sound in his head. After some time, he came across a video of the same melody. Someone said it was a piece by Mozart, one of his lighter, simpler works. Often used in old music boxes, he clicked on the video, and for the first time, he listened to the full version played on a piano. The soft keys, the smooth flow of the music hit, all felt soothing and warm. He wasn't the type of person who usually sat in silence, listening to piano music. But that night, he let the piece play several times. Each time felt like discovering something new. He didn't realize when it happened. But at some point, he stopped thinking about his long week, the stress at work, the conversations that bothered him, and everything else that usually filled his mind. The music didn't fix his problems, but it created a space where he could breathe for a little while. Before going to bed, he took another look at the music box. He gently ran his fingers over its scratched wooden surface. It didn't matter that it was old or worn out. It had character, it had a history, and now, strangely, it felt like it belonged with him. The next morning, he woke up earlier than usual. The winter sunlight came through the curtains in thin lines, and the room felt quiet. Almost without thinking, he reached for the music box and opened it once more. The melody played softly, filling the silence. He felt calmer than he had felt in weeks. It was strange to him how this tiny object had already become part of his day. He took a moment to sit on his bed and listen. With every turn of the cylinder, he felt something steady inside, something he hadn't felt in a long time. It was almost as if the music reached a part of him that words never touched. Later, as he got ready for the day, he kept wondering about the old neighbor. Why give this to him? Why now? He realized he didn't know anything about the neighbor's past. Maybe the man had stories that no one listened to. Maybe the music box had been a companion to him in difficult times. Maybe he simply wanted to share something meaningful before it was too late. The thought stayed with him. That evening, he brought a small bakery treat and visited the neighbor to thank him properly. When he knocked, the door opened slowly. The neighbor was surprised but happy to see him. They talked for a while. The young man gently asked where the music box came from. The old man smiled softly, looking into the distance as if recalling another life. He said it had belonged to his late wife, who loved classical music. She used to wind the box every night before sleep. After she passed away, he kept it for years, unable to let it go. But now that his memory was fading, he didn't want the box to be forgotten in a drawer. He wanted someone to listen to it. Someone who might find comfort the way his wife once did. Hearing this, the young man felt a quiet heaviness in his chest. He never expected such a meaningful story behind the simple gift. He thanked the neighbor again, this time with more sincerity, and promised he would take care of it. That night, when he returned to his room, he opened the music box again. This time, the melody felt different. Now he knew the story behind it. Now he understood the love it carried. The music sounded almost alive, as if those tiny metal pins were telling him a story of warmth, memory, and devotion. He found himself listening more closely than he ever had before. The melody flowed like a gentle whisper from the past, reaching out to him. It made him think about the relationships in his own life, people he cared about, people he lost contact with, moments he wished he appreciated more. Music had never made him think this way before. Before sleeping, he played the full piano version again on his phone. Then he explored other pieces by Mozart. Some were lively and cheerful, others soft and calming. He didn't understand the technical details of music, but he understood how it made him feel in the days that followed. He found himself listening to classical music during small moments while making tea, while taking a break at work, while resting in the evening. He played Mozart's lighter pieces when he wanted clarity, and the slower ones when he wanted to unwind. The more he listened, the more he realized how much he had been missing out on. One evening, after a long and tiring day, he came home feeling overwhelmed. Work had been difficult. Several tasks piled up. A few misunderstandings added to the pressure. The kind of day that made the world feel heavier than it should be. Without thinking, he reached for the music box and opened it. The soft melody echoed gently around the room, immediately easing the tightness in his chest. It was the first time he truly understood how powerful music could be. It wasn't just sound. It wasn't just notes. It was a feeling, a gentle presence that seemed to sit beside him, telling him that things would be okay. He sat in silence for a long time, letting the melody wash over him. Then he searched for more classical music online. He clicked on a Mozart playlist and let it play slowly in the background. Some pieces made him smile softly. Some made him reflect. Some made him breathe easier. The music did not solve all his problems, but it softened the moments that felt too sharp. It made the quiet evenings feel more alive. It gave him something to look forward to. That's when he realized something important. This was not just a random gift. It was the beginning of a journey he didn't know he needed. A journey that started with one melody. A journey that would soon lead him deeper into the world of classical music. Toward discoveries that would change his life in ways he had never imagined. The days after he first discovered Mozart felt different in a quiet but noticeable way. It wasn't some dramatic change, just a soft shift that made his mornings a little calmer and his nights a little easier. Every day, as he got ready for work, he found himself reaching for the same playlist he had saved the night he received the music box. He didn't fully understand why the music made him feel grounded, but he liked the feeling enough to let it become part of his routine. In the past, mornings were rushed. He would wake up, check his phone, scroll without thinking, and hurry through everything. But now, he let Mozart play in the background as he prepared for the day. It slowed him down in a good way. It made breakfast feel peaceful instead of rushed. Even the quiet moments, like pouring tea or standing near the window, felt more meaningful. One afternoon, during his lunch break at work, he sat outside on a small bench. The weather was mild, not too hot or too cold, and a soft breeze moved through the nearby trees. He put in his earphones and decided to explore another composer. The playlist suggested Vivaldi. He had heard the name before, but never listened closely. The moment Vivaldi's music began, he felt a kind of bright energy. The rhythms were quick, light, and full of movement, almost like someone painting with sound. It lifted his mood immediately. He found himself tapping his foot gently without even realizing it. The fast, lively strings made him feel awake in a way that coffee never could. He listened to Spring from the Four Seasons for the first time, and something about it made the world around him look more colorful. The trees, the sky, the people walking by, it all felt more alive. It amazed him how music created so much emotion without saying a single word. When his break was over, he walked back with a lighter step. The tasks waiting for him at his desk didn't feel as heavy. He still had work to do, but now there was something inside him that made it feel manageable. He kept listening while he worked, letting Vivaldi's cheerful rhythms help him stay focused. Over the next few days, this turned into a small habit. Whenever he needed energy or focus, he played Vivaldi. Whenever he needed calm, he played Mozart. This simple mix helped him move through his days with a little more balance. His coworkers noticed he seemed less stressed, though he didn't mention the music box or the older neighbor. Something about that gift felt personal. One evening, after an exhausting day, he sat down in his room with the lights dimmed. He looked at the music box sitting on his table. It was becoming part of his life, something he looked at the way one looks at an old friend. He opened the lid and listened once more. The melody filled the quiet room, making it feel warm despite the long, tiring day. After the melody finished, he opened his phone and played more classical music. This time, he wanted to understand it better. Not in a complicated, technical way, but in a personal way. Why did it make people feel things so deeply? Why did some pieces feel like sunlight and others like rain? As he listened, he read small descriptions written by other listeners. Many people shared how classical music helped them feel calm, overcome stress, or connect with old memories. Their experiences felt strangely similar to his own. It made him realize he wasn't alone in what he was feeling. One comment said that listening to classical music is like visiting places inside yourself that you forgot existed. That sentence stayed with him. He thought about how often he rushed through life without giving himself space to breathe. Maybe this music was giving him that space. He decided to explore more pieces by Vivaldi. Some were bright, some emotional, some almost playful. Each one told its own story without a single spoken word. He didn't understand the technical parts, tempo, key, harmony, but he understood how each piece made him feel. And for him, that was enough. The next weekend, he went for a morning walk, something he rarely did before. The streets were quiet, the air cool, and the sky soft with early light. He put in his earphones, chose Vivaldi again, and let the music set the pace of his steps. With each rhythm, he felt lighter, almost as if the sound itself was guiding his breath. He walked past little shops, children riding bicycles, and old trees that lined the road. Everything felt alive in a way he never paid attention to before. He wondered why he had never done morning walks earlier. Maybe life felt too heavy before. Maybe he didn't know how much he needed quiet moments until he finally experienced them when he returned home. He felt refreshed. He made a simple breakfast, played Mozart softly in the background, and let the peacefulness settle in. That morning felt like a small victory one. Of those moments that don't look big on the outside but transform something inside you as the days passed. His appreciation for classical music grew. He didn't treat it like something fancy or formal. He treated it like a companion that walked with him through different moods and moments. Sometimes he listened while cooking. Sometimes while cleaning. Sometimes while sitting quietly near the window, watching the evening sky change color. Classical music began to shape these small moments into meaningful ones. After a couple of weeks, he noticed another change. His thoughts felt clearer. He reacted less quickly to stressful things. He had more patience. Even when he faced challenges, he didn't feel overwhelmed as easily as before. It amazed him how sound could influence the mind so gently and naturally. One night, he decided to search more about the composers themselves. He read about Mozart's childhood, Vivaldi's life, and how each one created music during times of hardship. It surprised him how many pieces were made from human struggle, yet sounded so pure and beautiful. It made him see classical music in a new light. These composers were not just distant names from history, they were people who felt deeply. Just like anyone else, this made him feel even more connected to the melodies he listened to. They weren't just sounds, they were emotions. They were pieces of life. As weeks turned into a month, something unexpected happened. His curiosity grew stronger. He wanted to explore more composers. He wanted to find pieces that reflected different moments of his life. He didn't want classical music to be something he played only in the background. He wanted to understand it, to feel it, to let it guide him. One evening, while scrolling through recommendations, he found a playlist titled Classical Pieces That Change Your Mood. He clicked on it out of curiosity. As it played, he found himself absorbed in each piece. Some were soft, like gentle rain. Some were powerful, like a storm. Some were playful, like children running through a field. He listened to the playlist all the way through without skipping a single track. By the end, he felt something shift again inside him. It was the same feeling he had the night he first opened the music box, but deeper this time. Something inside him was opening. Slowly and quietly. He didn't know yet that this growing curiosity would soon lead him to Beethoven. He didn't know that Beethoven's bold, intense sound would speak to him during one of the hardest moments of his life. He didn't know that Bach's structure and balance would help him find peace when everything felt scattered. He didn't know that Chopin's soft piano pieces would become late-night companions on quiet emotional nights. All he knew for now was that Mozart and Vivaldi had unlocked a door he didn't know existed, and he felt ready to walk through it. That night, after turning off the lights, he sat near the window, the music box resting in his hands. He opened the lid slowly, and the familiar melody began once again. It didn't matter how many times he heard it. The melody never lost its charm. He closed his eyes and listened, letting the sound fill the room. For a moment it felt like the world slowed down. Nothing rushed him. Nothing pulled him in different directions. Everything was calm when the melody ended. He didn't feel sad. He felt grateful. That small tune had led him to a new world, one filled with sounds, feelings, and peaceful moments he never experienced before. He placed the music box gently on the table and looked at it with a soft smile. He didn't know what the next part of his musical journey would bring, but he felt hopeful. He had started with one melody. Now, he was ready to explore more. Little did he know, the music waiting ahead would not only entertain him, but change the way he understood himself. It would guide him through struggles, lift him through difficult days, and open parts of his heart he once kept closed. The journey had just begun, and the best was still ahead. He didn't realize how much his life had changed until the day everything felt heavy again. It was a morning that started the same as any other. He woke up, rubbed his eyes, and let a soft piece by Mozart play while he made tea. The sun was gentle, the room was quiet, and for a moment, everything felt all right. But as soon as he stepped outside, reality rushed at him. He had a stressful meeting coming up, a deadline he wasn't prepared for, a few messages on his phone that made his mind feel cluttered before the day had even begun. By the time he reached his workplace, his calm morning felt like a distant memory. The hours passed slowly. One task led to another, and nothing seemed to go the way he hoped. Small mistakes piled up and doubts began to creep in. He felt like he was trying to keep his head above water while the world around him moved too fast. Even during lunch, he found himself sitting quietly, feeling the tension tighten in his chest. That evening, when he finally reached home, he dropped his bag on the chair and sat on the edge of his bed. The room felt quiet, but not in a peaceful way. It felt empty, like the silence was pressing against him. He reached for the music box, opened it, and let the familiar melody play. It helped, but only a little. He needed something stronger. Something that could match the weight he was feeling inside. He searched through classical playlists again, scrolling slowly. That's when he stopped at a name he had seen many times, but never explored deeply. Beethoven. He had heard bits of Beethoven before, mostly in movies or short clips. But he never listened to a full piece with intention. He clicked on one of the most famous ones he'd found. The first few seconds were soft, but then the music grew stronger, deeper, fuller. The sound felt like it was pulling him into a storm that felt strangely familiar. The intensity of the music surprised him. It wasn't gentle like Mozart or bright like Vivaldi. It had weight. It had fire. It had struggle. The notes seemed to rise and fall like waves crashing against rocks, refusing to give in, and for the first time that day, he felt seen. There was something about Beethoven's music, the rawness, the emotion, the persistence that resonated with the heaviness inside him. It felt like someone was speaking to him without using words. Someone who understood what it felt like to fight through difficult days. He lay back on his bed. The music didn't soothe him gently. It lifted him, shook him, made him feel strong again. It felt like a voice saying, "You're tired, but you're still here. Keep going." He never imagined music could feel like encouragement. The piece ended, but the feeling stayed. He played another, and then another. Each one carried a different emotion: power, sadness, hope, determination. But all of them had the same strength behind them. Beethoven's music didn't hide from struggle. It embraced it. It transformed it. As he listened, something inside him shifted. The tension in his chest loosened. The thoughts that felt tangled began to settle. The heavy day didn't feel as impossible anymore. After an hour of listening, he sat up slowly. The room still felt quiet, but now the silence was comforting. Beethoven's strong, bold sound had carved out space inside him, space to breathe, space to think. He realized something important. Music wasn't just helping him relax. It was helping him live. Over the next few days, Beethoven became a steady presence in his life. On stressful mornings, he listened to strong symphonies that made him feel grounded. On nights when his thoughts were too loud, he played softer pieces that carried a quiet kind of strength. He didn't always understand the meaning behind each composition, but he didn't need to. He only needed how it made him feel. Soon, it became a habit. When life felt light, he listened to Mozart and Vivaldi. When life felt heavy, he turned to Beethoven. One evening, after a long day, he sat by the window with a warm drink in his hands. The sky outside was dark, sprinkled with faint stars. He played one of Beethoven's most famous piano pieces. The gentle yet powerful melody wrapped around him. Filling the room with emotion, he closed his eyes. And memories began to float through his mind. Times he felt lost. Times he felt unsure. Times he didn't know how he would move forward. The music made him realize that although he had struggled, he had also survived. He had grown. He had changed. Classical music wasn't just something he listened to anymore. It had become a companion as he continued exploring Beethoven's works. He learned a little more about the composer's life. He was surprised to find out how much Beethoven had suffered hearing loss, loneliness, frustration, yet he still created masterpieces that lasted centuries. This knowledge made the music feel even deeper. The idea that someone could face so many challenges and still create beauty touched him deeply. It inspired him. It reminded him that great things could rise from pain, and strength could come from struggle. This inspiration followed him into his daily life. At work, he found himself handling stressful situations with more patience. When small problems popped up, he didn't react as quickly or harshly. Instead, he paused, breathed, and moved forward with calm determination. His coworkers noticed the change. One even said, "You seem more focused these days." He smiled softly, not explaining that Beethoven was the reason. It felt personal, like something he wanted to keep close to his heart. On weekends, he went for walks with Beethoven's symphonies in his earphones. The strong rhythms pushed his steps forward. Even on days when he felt lazy or unmotivated, the music lifted him, pushing him to move. To keep going, he began to explore more classical composers, but Beethoven remained special. There was something about the intensity, the emotion, the raw honesty of the music that resonated with him more deeply than anything else. One day, when he was feeling especially overwhelmed, he sat on the floor of his room with the lights off. The only light came from the small lamp near his table. He played one of Beethoven's piano sonatas, letting the sound wash over him as the music grew stronger. He felt tears gather in his eyes, not from sadness, but from release. It was the first time in a long time he allowed himself to feel everything without holding back. The music didn't judge him. It didn't rush him. It simply moved with him. When the piece ended, he felt lighter. Not perfect, not suddenly healed, but lighter. As if a weight he had been carrying silently had finally loosened. He wiped his eyes and let out a deep breath. Something inside him knew that this was a turning point. He wasn't just listening to music. He was learning from it, growing through it. That night, he picked up the music box again. He opened the lid, and the familiar melody played softly. But this time, it felt different. It felt like the beginning of something bigger. He realized that the music box had led him here to Mozart, to Vivaldi, and now to Beethoven. It had opened a path he never knew existed, and now he felt ready for whatever would come next. In the days that followed, he continued to let Beethoven guide him through stressful moments. He learned to breathe when things felt overwhelming. He learned to pause when his mind felt crowded. He learned that struggle wasn't something to run from, but something to move through. He didn't tell many people about his growing love for classical music. It felt like a personal journey, something meant for him alone, something sacred. One quiet evening, as he watched the sunset from his window, he thought about how far he had come since the day he first received the music box. Back then, he didn't know anything about classical music. He didn't know how deeply it could reach inside him. He didn't know how much it would help him grow. But now, he understood. Music wasn't just background sound. It was a teacher, a friend, a guide. Beethoven had shown him strength during struggling days. Mozart had shown him peace. Vivaldi had shown him energy. And soon, without knowing it yet, he would discover the calm and healing hidden in Bach's structure and Chopin's gentle piano. His journey was far from over, but he felt ready to take the next step. For the first time in a long time, he didn't fear the future. He welcomed it, because he now carried something powerful. With him, the music that helped him rise. When life felt heavy, and it was only the beginning, he woke up the next morning with a strange mix of calm and confusion in his chest. The night before had stayed with him, especially the moment when Vivaldi's music lifted his thoughts and made him feel lighter than he had in a long time. But the new day brought its own noise, its own distractions, and he found himself walking through his routine almost on autopilot. Still, there was a quiet shift inside him. Something small, something gentle, but something real. He moved through the day, noticing things he had ignored before. The sound of a kettle boiling felt softer. The breeze outside felt a little more comforting. Even the way people passed by seemed different, as if he could finally sense the tiredness in their steps or the hopes hidden in their faces. Music had not solved all his problems, but it had opened a small doorway inside him. And once it was open, he couldn't close it again. Later that evening, he sat by the small table near his window. The sky outside was a dull mix of gray and pale orange, the kind that always made him feel unsure about what he was supposed to feel. He reached for his earphones almost without thinking and searched for a new piece, something he had not heard before. He paused for a moment, then clicked on a piano composition by Beethoven. The first notes came softly, almost hesitant. It felt like a person who didn't want to interrupt but still wanted to be close. As the music continued, it grew in confidence, and the sound filled the room with a warm, steady strength. It wasn't loud or demanding. It wasn't trying to push him in any direction. It simply existed, offering him a presence he didn't know he needed. He closed his eyes. And slowly, memories began to appear, moments he had not allowed himself to think about for years. Small things, Like the first time he realized life wasn't as simple as he had once believed. The time he tried to explain his feelings to someone but couldn't find the right words. The sounds of Beethoven's piano wrapped around these memories gently, as if telling him it was okay to remember. It was okay to feel. He let out a slow breath he didn't know he had been holding. It felt like something inside him loosened just a bit. He opened his eyes and stared out the window again. The world outside looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. The music had changed something in him, even if the change was too small to describe. It was enough. The next day, he went about his routine again, but he carried the calmness with him. Whenever he felt his thoughts becoming too heavy, he remembered the sound of Beethoven's piano and felt the tension fade. People who passed by seemed less distant. Even when things didn't go as he hoped, he didn't react with the same frustration that used to overwhelm him. He had discovered something, and he was learning to hold on to it gently. One afternoon, while walking home, he stopped by a street musician who was playing a violin. The notes were soft, smooth, and oddly familiar. He stood there, listening for a moment, letting the music lift the air around him. The musician noticed his stillness and gave a friendly nod, as if understanding without needing any words. He didn't have all the answers. He didn't know where life would take him. He didn't know if tomorrow would be better or harder. But he knew this. He was changing. Not all at once, not dramatically, but quietly. The way a seed grows underground before breaking the surface. And he had the music to thank for that. As the last note faded, he took a deep breath and smiled a small, honest smile. He wasn't fixed, but he wasn't lost either. He was somewhere in between. Somewhere real, and for the first time in a long time, it felt enough. The days had grown quieter in his life, but not in a sad way. Instead, there was a calmness that felt earned, as if he had walked through enough storms to understand the value of small, peaceful moments. When he looked back at everything he had been through, he realized how differently he handled life now, compared to before classical music entered his world. He remembered the first time. He opened that old music box and heard the gentle notes of Mozart. It felt like a lifetime ago, and yet the memory stayed fresh in his mind, like it had left a mark that time could not fade. He often wondered if he would have found this path without that moment, or if life had brought it to him at the perfect time for a reason. Now, music had become more than sound to him. It was part of how he lived. He played it in the mornings to begin the day with ease. He played it in the afternoons, when work became heavy. He played it at night when he needed to rest his thoughts. Each composer had become like a companion that helped him through a different part of the day. One morning, he sat near the window with a warm drink in his hands. The sunlight was coming into the room in a soft way, and Bach played gently in the background. The music made him feel grounded, like everything around him made sense. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound guide his breathing. It was in moments like these that he felt thankful for the chance to slow down. People around him had also noticed the change. He was no longer rushing through life or losing his patience easily. He spoke with more calmness. He listened more, and he cared about the small details that he used to ignore. When friends spent time with him, they often wondered why he seemed so peaceful. Some even joked that he had become wiser without trying. He would smile and tell them that it was simply the music. They laughed, thinking he was exaggerating, but he meant every word. Over time, he began sharing his favorite pieces with others. Not in a forceful way, but the way someone shares something that helped them and could help others. He made playlists for friends who felt stressed. He shared soothing pieces with people who struggled to sleep. Sometimes he would even play soft music in the background when guests visited. Almost every time someone asked about it, he loved watching their reactions. Some people looked surprised by how relaxed they felt. Others closed their eyes for a moment, trying to understand the feeling. Some simply stayed quiet, letting the music settle into them. And each time this happened, he felt a quiet joy inside. He knew what they were feeling. He knew how unexpectedly deep classical music could reach into someone's heart. One evening, sat on his couch with the room dimly lit. Chopin played softly, filling the room with warm, emotional notes. He thought about how life used to feel heavy and confusing. Back then, he didn't understand how to deal with his thoughts, how to stay calm, or how to let go of things he couldn't control. But now, he felt lighter. Not because his problems disappeared, but because he learned how to move through them. There were nights when he turned to Beethoven. The powerful sound gave him the strength to keep going when life felt too big. He remembered a time when he sat alone at night, listening to Beethoven with tears in his eyes. Not from sadness, but from the feeling of being understood by something he could not see. It reminded him that strength did not always come from loud moments. Sometimes it came from accepting where you are and believing you could grow from it. He also remembered the joy he felt when he discovered Vivaldi's energetic rhythms. Those melodies made him feel alive, awake, and ready to take on the day. On days when he felt tired or unsteady, he played Vivaldi to lift his mood. It amazed him how music could shift his whole energy. As he sat there now, he realized something clear. Music had become part of his healing journey. It had guided him through worry, stress, confusion, and the quiet moments when he needed comfort. It shaped the way he thought and the way he treated himself. One day, while cleaning a shelf, he found the old music box again, the one that started everything. The metal was a bit worn, but it still had a charm to it. He wound it gently and placed it on the table. The tiny melody played again, exactly the same as that first day, yet he was not the same person. Hearing it now made him smile. A genuine smile that came from deep inside. He watched the small mechanism turn and felt grateful. Life had given him something simple, and that simple thing had changed him without him even noticing when. He thought about how many people might be looking for peace, comfort, or inspiration without realizing that something as small as a melody could be the start. Later that week, he decided to create a collection of personal list of the pieces that helped him the most. He named it a simple title, something he felt connected to. It was the music that shaped his mornings, held his hands through long nights, and helped him breathe through difficult days. He put Mozart, Vivaldi, Beethoven, Bach, and Chopin in it. The composers who walked with him through different stages of his journey. Every piece had a story behind it. It's not a dramatic one, but a personal one. A moment when he felt lost. A moment when he found direction. A moment when he needed comfort. A moment when he needed strength. All of these moments became part of the collection one evening. While listening to the playlist, he felt a sudden sense of peace wash over him. He realized that his life was still far from perfect, but he no longer needed everything to be perfect to feel okay. He had learned to appreciate small joys, small improvements, small breaths of calm. Everything felt lighter because he had learned how to slow down. He began journaling at times, writing about how the music made him feel. He wrote about how certain sounds reminded him of his childhood, or how certain melodies made the world feel softer. These small reflections helped him understand himself even more. One thing surprised him the most. Classical music made him more patient with himself. He no longer rushed to fix everything at once. He learned to give himself time the same way a slow, gentle piece gives time for each note to settle. It taught him that growth is not loud or fast. Sometimes it is quiet, steady, and personal. A few weeks later, a friend told him they listened to the playlist he shared. They said it helped them feel calm during a stressful week. Hearing this warmed his heart. He realized that sharing music was like passing on a small light. Even if it helped only one person, it was enough. This made him think deeply about how the world can be overwhelming for many people. Stress, worries, uncertainty, everyone has their share. But maybe something simple, like music, could give people a small break from it all. He felt grateful to be able to share that with others. As time went on, he continued exploring new pieces. The journey never felt complete, and he liked that. Each new melody felt like a door opening to another feeling, another memory, another lesson. He found comfort in knowing that there was always something new to discover. One night, after a long day, he stepped onto his balcony. The sky was quiet and the air felt cool. He played a gentle piece by Mozart through a small speaker and leaned on the railing. The city lights looked distant, like stars on the ground. The music blended softly with the night air. He smiled back, just a small one, but it felt real when he returned home that evening. He decided to explore music from another composer he had always heard about, but never truly listened to: Bach. He selected a slow, peaceful piece and let the sound drift across the room. Bach's music was different. It had a kind of careful order to it, like the world suddenly made sense, like everything had a place. He felt himself settling into the rhythm, feeling the structure of the music guide his thoughts. Unlike the emotional waves of Chopin or the powerful rises of Beethoven, Bach's music felt like a quiet organizer. It didn't overwhelm him. It didn't pull him into memories. Instead, it made him feel grounded, steady, clear. As the notes continued, he realized he was breathing more evenly. His shoulders were more relaxed. His thoughts, which had often felt tangled, now felt smoother, like they were being gently combed through. He didn't know how long he listened. But when the piece finally ended, he felt a sense of clarity that surprised him. It was as if someone had cleaned a window he didn't realize was dirty, and now he could see the world a little more clearly that night. He lay in bed thinking about how different composers shaped his emotions in different ways. Mozart made him feel light. Vivaldi made him feel alive. Beethoven made him confront the deeper parts of himself, and Bach made him feel steady, balanced, almost rebuilt. He wondered how many other feelings were waiting for him in the music he had yet to discover. The next morning, he woke up early, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He opened the window and felt the cool air touch his face. He didn't rush through the start of his day like he usually did. Instead, he took his time, letting the calmness guide him as he ate breakfast. He played another piece by batch, the room filled with a sense of order that made everything feel more manageable. Even the tasks ahead of him felt less overwhelming. He found himself moving through the day with more confidence, more patience, and more awareness of how he felt. Later, during a quiet moment, he realized something important. He had never given himself the space to feel calm before. Music was teaching him how. That evening, he sat at his window again. The sky had turned a soft golden color, and the world outside looked peaceful. He played a new piece of music, this time by Chopin again, and let the gentle piano notes weave through the room. This time, the music didn't bring up heavy memories. It didn't push him to think deeply or reflect on the past. Instead, it wrapped around him like a quiet comfort, reminding him that it was okay to simply exist. It was okay to rest. He stayed there, listening, letting each note wash over him. Life outside the window kept moving. People walked, birds flew, cars passed. But inside his small space, everything felt calm and still. He realized he was learning to listen, not just to music, but to himself. For years he had ignored his own voice, pushing away feelings he didn't understand. But now, slowly, gently, music was teaching him how to hear again. In that moment, he felt something simple yet powerful: peace. Not the kind that comes from having everything figured out, but the kind that comes from understanding that life does not need to be perfect to be beautiful. He breathed deeply, letting the music settle into him. He felt grateful for every moment that had led him here. Grateful for the old music box. Grateful for the melodies that healed him. Grateful for the way music taught him to feel everything more gently. He stood there for a while, letting the night and the music wrap around him. For the first time in a long time, he felt truly content. He realized that even though the world can be loud and stressful, there will always be a place of quiet inside him, a place that classical music helped him build, and he carried that place with him. Every day, knowing that as long as he had those melodies, he would never be completely lost again.